Our next section is the UFC, particularly Mr. Dana White, has said. He never says never, but on this occasion, he will never re-sign Francis Ngannou. What do you think about that, Isaiah?
Well, okay, so I have to think about this from a cause and effect type of viewpoint because if we look back to the reason why Ngannou left the UFC, it was because of the lack of guarantees as a fighter. Like, for example, even though um, Ngannou was offered to be the most paid heavyweight in history, he didn't agree to it because they wouldn't offer things like basic forms of insurance. Like that should be a thing for fighters who put their life on the line. You want to be guaranteed these things. That makes sense. And so he left.
Mm-hmm.
However, because he did that, you do have to think about the consequences, such as hurting the business of the UFC and Dana White specifically, because you're saying that the UFC doesn't offer the basic benefits that every fighter should get, right? So you're making a statement that could and probably has hurt the business of the UFC. So if I'm a business owner and I have a worker who has done that, right? Who has aimed to say a statement that I don't know if there are people who are still in the UFC and who are staying there, so there must be some like gray area to this. But if you're trying to hurt the business, then we have issues, right? So yeah, I kind of see that the reason why he they're just not seeing eye to eye on this thing, is especially when we talk about like why aren't we making Ngannou versus John Jones? It's for that reason. It's because they've uh Dana White has tried to make that fight for 3 years, but they could never come across an agreement. Um, and I mean, even if that, to be honest, even if that fight was to happen and based off of what John Jones did to Cyril Gahn, it's probably going to end up the same way. Um, because I feel like Ngannou and Cyril Gahn, that was a pretty good matchup. But if John Jones capitalized on Cyril Gahn and he was to do the same thing to Ngannou, there not wouldn't be really a point. It's like a level thing to this, and John Jones is just the goat right now. Um, so I'm not sure if that would be worth it to even see Ngannou versus John Jones. So that's probably why they'll just that whole hurting the business thing, didn't able to work things out kind of thing. So yeah. Um, Sometimes as a business owner, I'm assuming that you just have to make those kind of decisions. I'm not a business owner in that sense, and I'm not sure if I would make that same decision. But someone of Dana White's position, where you have to make those kind of decisions, I don't disagree with it personally. So that is what it is. What do you think, Mike? What do you think about them never resigning Francis like that?
Well, we are business owners. We have a business called the M and I's podcast,
Oh
and
yeah, that's right.
so
That's true.
here's where I'm going to come at this.
Okay.
I'm
What you got?
coming at it in terms of viewership appeal.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
According to Chael Sonnen in one of his interviews and podcasts he did, he mentions that the Ngannou versus Gane did such horrible numbers
Wow.
that it was no longer financially beneficial to the UFC to have Ngannou with
Mm.
even with the demands he was making, right? Let's say, for example, those demands were also being made by Conor McGregor. I'm sure as hell
Mm-hmm.
the UFC is going to appease and try to find a common ground to get as much of whatever demands Conor wants in that contract done. Unfortunately, Ngannou is not the star power, nor has the gravitas of pay-per-view buys as a Conor McGregor. So that's why it was unreasonable for Ngannou to make those demands and have the numbers he has in terms of his pay-per-view holdings. So the UFC saw that and was like, even if we try to make Ngannou versus Jones, it's not going to do much because it's not going to garner the buys or attention anymore. Even though I kind of disagree on that point, because I do want to see Ngannou versus Jones.
Yeah, I think now you could make that argument.
Yeah,
because of what he did to Cyril Gane. So now you want to see what Francis Ngannou could have done, right?
Yeah, so that's the thing. Is like there's that appeal, but with the UFC saying they'll never re-sign him, me personally, I don't think that's the case. I think they will re-sign Ngannou.
Wow.
Depending on what he does to Stipe, because Ngannou faced Stipe, right? That's going to garner more people to be like, we want to see what Ngannou does or what Jones does to Ngannou, right? In that fight, in that matchup. It might just be for a one fight deal, right? They might re-sign him. Likewise, in terms of businesses, right, and how I approach it, I don't publish all our videos on YouTube. I don't publish every single one of our recordings. I pick and choose primarily which gets the most attention, and I'm sure the UFC sees that. They're going to be like, all right, let's see how John Jones does against Stipe. Oh, John Jones does really good against Stipe. Everyone, including the mass media, ESPN, people like that are going to be like, we want to see Ngannou versus John Jones. They're going to build that fight up so easy once that happens. Once John Jones beats Stipe Miocic, which is going to look really good for either John Jones or it's going to look even better for Francis Ngannou. So then people are going to be like, Ngannou has a good chance of beating John Jones because John Jones didn't look so good against Stipe. This, that, and the third. There's going to be a lot of talk about it. And what's going to happen, what I see what's going to happen is the UFC is going to re-sign Ngannou for a one-fight deal. It's a one-and-done thing. See how that happens, right? For Dana White to say, I never say never, and the one thing I'll say is I never sign Francis Ngannou. I think that's garnering more attention to building it up because Dana White's a smart man, and I know he knows how to create narratives and build up the media's attention, and that's one of those.
Yeah, it's like how he said if you watch like the post fight interview for the UFC fight, like he was talking about how Michael Chandler and McGregor hate each other. Well, of course they hate each other. You want us to watch the tough series. That's the point. So yeah, I mean, yeah. So he says he will say things that will garner the most hype in time. So I do agree with you. I think that now that you say that, I think it might that statement might become more malleable if the narrative plays out the way we think it is, in which John Jones ices Stipe Miocic. Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Having a stroke there. I was like, Anyway, he ices Stipe, and then now you want to see what will he do against the hardest fighter. Right now, it's gotta cook. Let him cook a little bit more. Let John Jones cook a little bit more.
Yeah. It's like fucking the steak is gonna be raw, bro. Let it cook until it's like medium rare, right at that perfect moment where it's like cooked and juicy all at the same time, which is going to be amazing, right?
But don't wait too long though, because we don't want
that fucking well done fucking beef jerky type of steak. We ain't about that life.
Yeah, because John Jones may be the GOAT, but he did, no one can beat Father Time. So, um,
Mm,
what would be interesting, right? Let's say if we get past the time span between Stipe and Ngannou, it's gonna take some years, right? So, what if Khabib
oh my!
trains a heavyweight with the
You
Dagestani style,
dog. Fucking Isaiah, stop. Stop right there.
and then
See, when I speak something into existence, it's a plausible thing.
come on, that sounds cool. Does that
That's
not
not
sound cool?
That's not a plausible thing.
What do you mean? It's just to have someone in
No,
the heavyweight
dude.
division.
I'll be honest. Like even I say I want Khabib in Islam's corner. Khabib said that he's stepping away from being at the fight game and stuff like that.
That's lame. Come on.
I want him in the
Come
corner, but
on.
I know reality sometimes, and I'm like, he did say that.
Okay,
He said,
no, it's true. Yeah, no, that's everybody. Yeah, Khabib is. I think I showed a video to Mark a while back from Mexican mixed martial arts channel. That I love that channel, by the way.
Mhm.
Shout out to them. But he basically said that what you call it, Khabib is a man. Khabib is good because he's a man of his word. He said that he is not going to come back, and he's not coming back. So he hasn't come back so far, and I'm pretty sure he's pretty set on that. He had his high, he has his record. He got off on a good note. Now it's time for him to give back to the world in other ways, and he's doing that already. So yeah, he's done. He's
"Yeah,
done with that.
that's the thing. Is like I respect that about Khabib,
Mm-hmm.
but that's I would like to see him in
Come
Islam's
on.
corner.
That'd been so cool. He would have won. He would have won it in a better fashion if.
Oh
Khabib
hell
wasn't
yeah,
there.
it would have been a friggin' dominant fashion.
Yeah, he would have told Islam, "What are you doing? Why you deviate from plan? You deviate from plan. Look, you got face. Your face ugly now. Look, you go back plan and boom, easy."
No, but yeah, what's going to happen is when I say it's going to happen, I'm hoping it happens. I'm speaking it into existence, manifesting it into reality. But
Oh,
what I'm really hoping for is John Jones versus Stipe is going to happen sometime at the end of this year, right?
mm-hmm.
Or sometime in the beginning of next year. And depending on how that goes, John Jones like freaking ices, completely destroys him in the stand up,
Mm-hmm.
like how Ngannou does, right? And destroys him. And that's going to be the narrative, and the whole entire media, including us, are going to scream, "We want Ngannou versus Jones." And the UFC, as much as like how petty Dana White could be sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
He knows that's going to get so much views, pay-per-view buys, money for the UFC.
That's just free money.
Yeah.
I think at that point, yeah.
If his pettiness prevents us from having that fight, then I'll be like, "Yo, Dana White, please resign." Resign. We need someone who can like set aside their personal vendettas and have that. Because the one thing about the UFC compared to boxing is they give the fight that fans want.
Mm-hmm.
And it is because, and if the fans are screaming Ngannou Jones or Jones Ngannou, they have to give that fight, because those are two, arguably, one is like a tactical magician in John Jones, and one is a nuclear bomb in Francis Ngannou.
Yeah.
I would love to see that fight, because both guys have something that the other guy doesn't. John Jones has practically the God-given gift of being such a badass, being well-rounded in wrestling and submissions and everything else, while Ngannou has something called the magic eraser, which is that can bomb to your chin. But let us know what you guys think. Will the UFC re-sign Francis Ngannou to fight John Jones? Or will Dana White actually stick to his word and be like, he'll never be re-signed on the UFC banner? Let us know what you guys think in the comment section below.